Hi guys, welcome to August Dispatches. But before we get down to the figures, and I'll come to that very soon, I'd just like to say a very big thank you to all of our friends down in Australia. From the middle of July to the 25th, I was down in Brisbane, Sydney, Adelaide and Melbourne, and it was a great trip. Pretty good weather and lovely and cool compared to Hong Kong, but the most important thing was to meet up with our dealers and collectors in each of these great Australian cities. And when we have these meetings, as I've mentioned before, it's not just a case of me getting up there and telling people about the new items that we're releasing or that King & Country is planning to produce over the next few months. It's really a chance to listen to the collectors themselves, to hear what they like, but also to hear their suggestions and share with us their thoughts on what they would like to see in the coming year. And this particular trip was great because we get so many very, very good ideas. And again, I had the chance to talk with many of the collectors on a one-to-one basis through a whole range of dinners and events and visits to even individual collectors' collections. And I should mention two particular collections here. One was in Brisbane, and thanks to Brett Williams, our dealer in Brisbane, we went to visit Mark Harrison, who has this amazing collection and a purpose-built, custom-made shed. And to call it a shed is really a bit of an understatement, but a structure on his property where he had all of his collection. It wasn't just King & Country, but lots of other great work from other manufacturers. But I'm happy to say I think King & Country was the majority of his collection, and see what he had done and how he'd collected over the years. But I say, Mark's collection wasn't the only one we went to see. In Adelaide, once again, I got to meet my friend Robin Beer, and we visited his collection and saw what he had collected over the years. And again, not exclusively King & Country, but a substantial proportion of it certainly was. And it was inspiring just to see the dedication and enthusiasm both these collectors and other collectors have for our product. And it makes you very humble when you see how much enjoyment it gives to other people. So once again, many thanks to everyone down in Australia for really making my visit something special, and I hope they get something out of it as well. With that behind us, unfortunately, let's get down to what we've got this month, and let's begin with rather strange little trio of Afrika Korps soldiers on camels. Now, this came about from a few years ago when we were also doing an Afrika Korps series, and I was looking at old photographs and discovered a photograph that probably was taken not long after the Afrika Korps arrived in North Africa in 1941, and it was a photograph of two AK soldiers on camels, and it got me thinking, hey, there's no reason why they couldn't have done camel patrols as many other armies did that took part in the North African campaign. And it was something that was quite intriguing. So we designed 3 Afrika Korps soldiers on camels, and you can see them right here. Not only that, we've also got 2 North African figures, one of a camel herder and probably the camel owner. Now, the camel herder is the guy that would have instructed these Germans how to ride a camel and be able to handle a camel while moving across the desert. So this guy's watching to see how they perform, while maybe the owner himself is a little bit worried about the safety of his animals, because up until this point, or certainly up until the outbreak of war, camels like this would have been used to transport rich tourists to special sites in Egypt and Libya and elsewhere in North Africa. So we've got the owner here who's watching to make sure his animals are well cared for and looked after properly. Excuse me. Now, we go from North Africa in 1941. I'll just turn the page. And then we'll go to these chaps here. Now, again, one of the things that we've been trying to do, or been thinking about for our Crusaders and Saracens series, is to have some Crusader archers. And what we've got here is basically 5 individual archer figures, English archers in this case, but they could be any, they're wearing a Crusader cross, so in fact, there could be almost any nationality that took part in the crusade. And what we decided to do was to make slight variations in the same figure, but to give you an alternative colour choice as well. So altogether, you could say there's 10 archers available, and we've put them in different action poses, whether it be aiming the arrow, firing the arrow, or getting ready to fire, stringing the bow, or kneeling just about to take up a firing position. So again, these figures work great with any of our Crusaders and Saracens, and I think it'll be a very useful addition to that. Now, from that we shall move on to these Roman figures here. Now this is the part, or the first part, of what I think will be quite a long series of figures, and that's relating to the Roman triumph. Now, what was a Roman triumph? A triumph was a large ceremonial parade that would move through the streets of Rome, especially after a great victory, or perhaps a country had been conquered and occupied, and the victorious Roman legion and its commanders would come back to Rome and be given a parade through the city streets. So what we've got here is maybe one of the senior officers from that parade on horseback, and he's having a closer look at these chaps in the front. Now these guys themselves are known as lictors, and they carried a special bunch of sticks, or what were called fasces, that were bound together with a sort of red material, and in the middle of that red material would also be an axe. Now the word fasces, which is used to describe the bunch of rods with the axe, actually was later used as a symbol for the fascist party in Italy, run by or led by Benito Mussolini. So this fascist symbol of the rods and the axe together was used by Mussolini's fascists, but this is where it first originated from. And what you've got here are 4 different figures, and in fact this is a set of 4 figures, all in slightly different positions, but taking part in the parade. Behind them are 4 legionary musicians. Now, Roman legions had a number of different musicians, but in this case, these were playing what are called tuba trumpets. This is a long trumpet with an upturn at the end, and these guys would provide not particularly music for the benefit of the legion, but they were used for trumpet calls that would be used in battle or in camp, so that they would have specific trumpet calls that might say, or might shout, advance, retreat, move to the left, move to the right, whatever it would be, or that was in battle, but in the camp they would be used to announce the changing of the guard, or perhaps retirement, meaning time to go to bed, lights out, all of that, or reveille, or wake up in the morning. Anyway, we've got again a set of 4, and they are 4 different trumpet players, all slightly different positions, but all doing the same thing. So again, part of a parade, and this is just the first part of the triumph. The triumphs themselves would also have usually a figure of a Roman general or commander in a chariot, and he would be the victorious commander, and he was in charge of the whole triumph. But in the wake of him, there would be perhaps hundreds of prisoners taken from the defeated army or the conquered nation, and all kinds of booty and special materials or weapons or trophies of war that were brought back to Rome. So that will also be in the triumph, and of course legionary soldiers themselves, the different branches of the legion that would march in the parade. The thing about these triumphs were, apart from marching through Rome on that day, they would also have sacrificial bulls that were taken to one of the great temples, I think it was the Temple of Jupiter, and sacrificed there in honor of this special event. So I hope those will be included in future releases. Another thing about the triumphs were, at the end of the parade, there would be a series of games held in the Colosseum or places like that, where there'd be special displays put on by gladiators or captured prisoners or what have you. But that was also another bread and circuses, they call it, where food would be handed out, wine would be supplied free, the entertainment themselves would be for the masses. And that was also another part of the Roman triumph. Now let's go from ancient times to a little bit more modern. This little GI here is actually one of, I think it was VN 109, a set that was just retired recently, of 3 walking Marines, maybe on patrol. Now, of the 3 walking figures, there was one figure that was more popular than the rest. In fact, after the announcement that that set had been retired, we had more than a few requests. Could that figure be made available? So we decided, yep, okay, let's do it as a single figure. Now this guy here has got his rifle in his right hand, but in his left hand he's up round his neck, actually holding on to a scarf. Now these military scarves or towels that were used, and you can often see them in photographs from Vietnam, soldiers would use to wipe the sweat from their face and their neck, everything, because as you might imagine, the temperatures in Vietnam could range from, believe it or not, freezing cold in the mountains to obviously very hot, sticky and humid in the jungles and the lowlands and the paddy fields of Vietnam. So guys were constantly sweating, and these little towels, which were military issued to the army and the Marines, anybody going into the field would carry one of these towels around their necks. And not only were they good for wiping the sweat off your face or your neck, but they could also be used in an emergency, as when there was a dust storm or something like that. You could use that as almost like a bandana over your lower nose and mouth to keep the dust out of your nostrils and mouth as well. And finally, in a real emergency, they can be used almost as part of your first aid kit to help staunch wounds, almost as a large, soggy field dressing. If no field dressings were around, or where the wound was even bigger than a field dressing could take care of. So these little towels are an interesting part of the whole Vietnam story, and that's why we decided we'd bring this little figure back as a single figure on his own for those guys that want this guy doing this kind of thing to be made available. So that's basically what we've got this month. Obviously last month was a bumper month in terms of releases with our Huey helicopters, our chuck wagon, and I've forgotten there was something else as well. Oh, the Sherman tanks. This month, a little bit lighter, a little bit easier on the pocket, but I hope there's some items for some of our collectors that have not been able to get something for a wee while. So here you see it, and you'll get a closer look at everything now. I hope that, as I say, there's something for you, and if there's not, always remember there's the next month after that. So I'll leave that with you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.